Hi everyone, so I get a lot of questions about my digital art and what I use to make my art. So I wanted to talk about the two ways that I do digital art. One of them is the way I do it all the time on my iPad. I use Procreate for basically everything, but the other way is if you want to draw on your computer and you don't have an iPad, I'll show you the way that I do it for that as well. I used to use Paint Tool Sci for all my digital art if I was working on the computer, but I recently switched to Clip Studio Paint just because finding brushes is a lot easier for that program, and I'm honestly still learning to use it, so I can't really explain how I use it. That is what I use for the computer. And the tablet itself, I actually have been using Huion tablets for the last few years if I'm going to be working on my computer, and for this video they sent me one of their new models to try out. It is a kamvas 22 Plus, and they sent it to me to talk about and give you my thoughts on it, and I'm using Clip Studio Paint with it in this video, and I'm also editing my video with it, and I use Clip Studio Paint to draw over stuff on my thumbnails for my videos, or little doodles to go in the video for editing. So first I'll just tell you the specs about this tablet. It is the kamvas 22 Plus. The model number of this one is the GS2202. The size is 21.5 inches. That's the diagonal measurement. It's 1920 by 1080 resolution. The contrast ratio is 1200 to 1 for the 22 Plus. The response time is 14 milliseconds. The color gamut for the 22 Plus is 140% sRGB. The display color is 16.7 million or 18 bits. And the pen is battery free, which I think is I think all tablets should just have a battery-free pen. It's so much more convenient to not have to charge your pen, and especially when the charging methods are a bit faulty sometimes. In the older Huion tablets, the pens I found had trouble charging sometimes, and I had to get a replacement cable or a replacement pen because the charging just was a little bit finicky. But with this, that's not an issue at all because it is a battery-free pen. The pen resolution is 5080 LPI, and there's 8,192 levels of sensitivity, which is pretty much a standard nowadays with all of their newer tablets. There's no finger touch, you have to use the pen for everything. It also comes with a stand that you screw onto the back, and I really, really like the stand. It's a similar model to the one they used on the GT191 that I reviewed a while ago. I just think it's a great stand. And in total, the tablet weighs 3.9 kilograms with the stand screwed on. And in case you don't know what a graphics tablet is, this is basically a monitor you can draw on with a pen. You have to plug it into a computer for it to work. It's not a built-in device like an iPad or Huion actually has computer models now, which I think is pretty cool that they have those. I wonder what it's like. Right now, the price of this tablet on their website is $549 US, which is a lot cheaper than the Wacom tablets you see these days. Let me just compare that. Yeah, if you want a tablet of this size from Wacom, it's gonna be over $1,000. So this is such a better deal. And my thoughts on it is that the older Huion displays, I feel like they used to not have as good color. Their colors weren't as accurate before. You had to really play with the settings to get the colors to be right, but every new tablet I try is just better and better, and I feel like this one is the best Huion tablet that I've tried in a long time. The screen is etched glass, so you're not drawing on a glossy, slippery surface. It feels much more natural, almost papery. That's my favorite part about it. There's no express keys on the side, but Huion also sent with it their mini key dial, and I gotta say, this was one of the things I was most excited about with this. Basically, you plug it into your computer, make sure you install the driver softwares properly. You have to uninstall any previous tablet drivers. I think I had to reboot my computer a few times to get it to work, or I rebooted it first, then completely installed it, then maybe I rebooted it again. Sometimes it can take a little bit of trial and error to get the drivers to work, but once I got it to work, it's just been working. I have no problems with it not working anymore. So you download the driver for the tablet, and if you're getting the mini key dial, this is sort of like a little extra keyboard. with little hotkeys on it that you can program to be whatever keystroke or button or function you want them to be. So I have all the things I use the most, like brush size up and down, which are the brackets. I have undo, save, transform, enter, space, which lets you move the canvas around. The dial zooms in and out. I programmed all the keys to be exactly what I want. I do think a keyboard is almost a little bit easier than this, but I feel like this is useful for me because I am left-handed. I don't really know how to use a keyboard with just my right hand. It feels very clunky to me because I'm used to having my right hand on the mouse and my left hand on the keyboard. It's a pretty cool little thing if you want to have like external hotkeys. It's like a little remote for your computer, basically. You can program them all to be whatever you want. Another cool thing about the mini key dial, the KD100, is that you can actually place it on your tablet screen and use it that way, or put it on your desk. Either is fine. I think having it on the tablet screen is the most comfortable, but it does cover a portion of the screen, which is something to keep in mind. And the mini key dial also works wireless, but I find plugging it in is the most consistent way for it to always work, because otherwise you don't know if the battery's dead or if it's just not connected or not responding. But plugging it in just makes it work consistently pretty much the entire time. And honestly, drawing on this feels natural. It feels great. I don't notice any issues really. Like, it's honestly a really solid product, and I'm really happy with the quality of their tablets lately, especially the etched glass. And I'm excited to see what they do in the future, because honestly, Wacom products are extremely expensive, and it's just so nice to have options that are like less than half the price of the Wacom tablets, which in the past were like basically the leaders of the tablet industry. Like, if you want a tablet, you go to Wacom. But now I feel like Huion, for the last several years, has really been a good option. I really like drawing on this. And I use Clip Studio Paint when I draw. And the thing about Clip Studio Paint, you can import your brushes from their brush place. I have a bunch of clips in here of me drawing on it, but I honestly can't explain how I do it because I am still figuring it out. But I've heard really good things about Clip Studio Paint from my friends, my fellow artists. So I'm still figuring out Clip Studio Paint. I can't really go in depth about the program. So far I like it, and I like the brushes. I've been finding some brushes that I like and organizing them. It's fun to browse the brush catalog and import them. And that's really all I can say about Clip Studio Paint. But in terms of hardware, I use the Huion Canvas 22 Plus now. In the past, I've gotten some questions about how I use my iPad to make art, what brushes do I use, like what's my sort of workflow with all of that. So I wanted to make a video showing that. And first of all, I have an iPad Pro 12, I think. It's the first generation where the pencil charges by clipping to the top. In this case, I have it just from Amazon. I'll try to find it and put it in the description. It's a nice little grip for the pencil. But what I like to do, I have a bunch of like presets. I should probably delete these because each project I use like different specs. You'll probably hear cicadas outside, by the way. I can't really get them to stop, obviously. But for a project, I like to just press new, and I'm going to be working on a Patreon print. And this is not my way of advertising Patreon or anything. I just really do need to work on this. So I'm just going to make the canvas for that. It's 5x7. The DPI is always 300. You can make it more if you want, but it's generally better to have the right ratio. You can make it bigger than you need so that you can always scale it down, because you can't make things bigger, but you can make them smaller. I kind of already had one there, but I just made another one to show you. And sometimes I'll like to just resize the canvas, but I lock it in settings here, press lock, and then you can make it bigger while maintaining the same ratio, just to give myself a little bit of extra wiggle room. I make it about 25% bigger than it really needs to be. So I'll show you how actually disorganized my brushes are. What do I have here? I have this charcoal master pack, and I don't really use most of this. I only use like one or so brushes from it, not a lot. all of the brushes that come with it, like all these like fancy ones down here, I usually don't touch. The ones that I like are the sketching ones. Some of the inking ones are pretty nice. I don't really touch the drawing ones, honestly. But basically the way I've collected the brushes that I use is I find the ones in the sketching. I like the 6B pencil. That one I think is one of my favorites. This shouldn't be here and that shouldn't be here. It's very disorganized. But I have a favorite brushes section where I have a lot of brushes that I like. But to be honest, this needs updating. I think this is one that I downloaded. It's like a interesting one for adding like hatching or marks. But some brush packs I can recommend for you to try. One of them is Dina's brush pack. All her pencil brushes I really like. There's just something about them all that I like. I'm not a huge fan of brushes that are very soft and almost not that sharp. Like I like how this one is very crispy. This one's more soft. So I like the really like high resolution crispy brushes. I like her brush called Crispy Colored Pencil. That's like one of my favorites. And her shading graphite I think is really nice. It's just like a nice soft grit you can add to stuff. So I use some of Dina's brushes and I've modified some of her brushes into like a different folder that I use. I think Sketch is like all the brushes that I use. So her Crispy Colored Pencil I modified to be more like this, I guess. It pretty much looks the same. I don't know what I did to it, but I go into the brush settings and you just click on the brush like that and you can tweak it. And some of them I just make it so that you don't have to press as hard to have a thicker line. I just play with the sensitivities of it, and all of this is very like personal preference, but I find just going in and like changing some stuff and testing it here can help you see what you enjoy about a brush. In properties, I usually change this the most. I think like the maximum size, because then it kind of affects how the brush behaves, because I'm pressing just as light here as here, and it gets a little bit, it's not only like changing the size, it's like changing how much pressure it takes to make a big brush. So this all depends on like how heavy handed you are, and if you want the brush to taper a lot, you turn down the minimum size and then it can get really, really tiny. But if you don't really want it to taper at all and make it more of like a mono line, then how do I clear this? Clear. Then you turn up the minimum size. So basically this just controls how much it like tapers. So you can make it very taper a lot or not really at all. It's all specific to the brush, but some other brushes that I use all the time are the Max Pack brushes, and recently it's been the Retro Max Pack, because his brushes are just really nice for like natural looking paint. And I don't really use a lot of them. I only use a couple, like these ones that are very like it's almost like too textured for me. I just like a good brush, a good like simple brush. Like this dry brush one I use to sort of add textures and stuff. It'd be smaller than that though. I think I use different brushes each time I draw. So I have a folder for sketch, and these are all brushes that I kind of like to sketch with, and I keep them all here. Sometimes I color with these. These basically just mean like brushes that are somewhat opaque but are still have like a natural look to them. I do paint with them sometimes and color with them, kind of like a colored pencil. Then I have a folder called grain, and basically all of these are, this is like Dina's graphite brush. You can add like soft grain. This is the Max Pack dry brush, one of the dry brushes. I don't know which one it's from. This is like my own brush that I made. It's like my noise brush. I think what I did is I took the airbrush from Procreate and dropped in my own texture and all that. This is another noise brush that I made from the same texture. It's just like a little thicker and darker. This is also a Max Pack brush. It's like a very like crunchy stipple. I have the same one below it. I think I modified it somehow. I don't remember how, my biggest tip would be to name your brushes always and like keep them organized, because some of these I don't know what they are. But I only know like specific ones, and then there's all these other ones I don't even look at, and I just go to the ones that I use. And this one is like a watercolor texture thing. So say I filled the canvas with one color and I wanted to like make it sort of look like it's natural paper. He has this brush that you can sort of do that with, although I wouldn't use this color necessarily, but then it kind of looks like a paper. That's a bad example, but like, so you had like a off-white piece of paper, you could like add paper texture to it, and then it kind of like gives it a natural sort of look. I don't like using too many like big sparse textured brushes, but I do have these little collections of my favorite ones. This is like a whole charcoal pack that I honestly don't really use, but it's honestly really, really nice if you like charcoal and you want to like do it digitally. There's some really cool brushes in there. I'll link that in the description. But the Max Pack brushes are my favorite brushes, and I just really like, the thing I like about them the most is just he has these like high resolution textures. So every brush is very like crispy and nice, and then I like modify the settings as I see fit. Like I change the maximum minimum size, and like if there's any like smoothing or the streamline, which like is kind of like a stabilizer. But his gouache and watercolor packs are my favorite. The retro pack and the watercolor pack, those are my two favorites. And there's a lot of really cool brushes you can use in there. There's just a lot. So those are the brushes that I use. People ask me a lot. I can't really like give you my brushes because a lot of them are ones that I've bought from people, and then I've taken those and modified them to fit my needs and put them in all these folders. But right now, I mostly just use what's in the sketch folder. The general is from Charcoal Master Pack. There's Pitch Black. I don't know if I use this one a lot. I kind of do. I change up my brushes a lot every time I draw. My process for digital, I kind of like to, I usually start with like a blank canvas, I guess. I'm actually not a huge fan of that brush for sketching. Sometimes I like it. It really depends on the mood. I'm going to use just like the pencil H that comes with Procreate, and I probably modified the settings a bit. So say I just wanted to draw a bird. I've been drawing these like stupid little birds lately, so I'll just do that just to give you an idea of what my process is like. He's got an eye. So the way I would use the brushes, that's the sketch brush. So let's turn it down, turn down the opacity of the layer, and new layer. I'll pick a different brush. Usually it's still in sketch, so let's say it's like clean pencil, something a little bit more substantial to do lines, and I do the lines on top of the sketch. This is like sort of like if I was doing a sticker, I guess. I like to make it a bit cleaner. And this is really quick just to show you how I use the brushes. It's just a stupid little bird. This is just a doodle, basically. And I like to add little textures with the lines. This specific brush is very squared. So if I want that look for the art, I'll use this brush, but you can use like whatever lined brush you want. And then to do the coloring underneath, sometimes I like to go to my color tab, and I have these like big, like very crisp blocks of color, and I like to lay in the color below it with that. Or if I want to do it more natural, let's just change the background of the canvas. I'll use the color block to change the background of the canvas to, let's just make it like a nice light blue. There's like a big smoothing on this because sometimes I use this brush to do outlines on my stickers. So let's say this is the background. To color the bird, I would go to either the Retro Max pack or color. I think I have some brushes I like in here, but I would just go to the Retro Max pack and I use the gouache brush, the Gouache Flow Detail. And what color should this bird be? Maybe it's a white bird or like a more brown bird. Let's change the color of the line art. I can leave it on the gouache brush to give it some more texture. I like the line art to be more of a warm color usually. And you go to there, and I'll use the gouache brush. You might hear my dog snoring. So let's make this bird a nice, maybe it's like more of like a raven. I don't really know. I'm doing this very quickly just to show you. It's more of a black bird. I'll just use some of this gouache brush to color it in. Then say I want it to have like blue accents. You can just use the same brush. Maybe it has a pink beak. And if I want to add some graininess, I can add that. Bring some of the background of the blue back in. Add some of the stipple brush. I just like switch back and forth between brushes a lot to like add these little textures, I guess. And there's no one method that I use for everything. But I sort of just like to see what it's looking like and just switch between brushes a lot. And look at the texture of the brushes and see if it would fit for that specific drawing. Let's make the background more of like a light yellow. Then I can make a new layer, go back to the sketch. It can even be on top of the line art, and I just kind of like to draw in details on top of everything with like a brush that has texture. Like every brush I use has some sort of texture to it so that there's no like really harsh, unnatural looking lines. So I just kind of keep adding stuff on top of everything with textured brushes until I achieve the look I want. I hope this sort of helped explain my process in layering different brushes, and try to find brush packs that you like and modify them to suit your needs and really give each brush a chance, because you can honestly make anything with any brush. It doesn't really matter. But there are ones that will sort of complement your style the best. So I hope you enjoyed this. It's not like the nicest, most amazing masterpiece, but it's just like a little sketch to show you how I do things. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks to Huion for sending me Tablet to try. It's always fun to try new stuff like that. And I'll see you in my next video.